Yo guys, it's Clint, and it's time to talk about the Eldar. But the problem I'm having at the moment is how I can most effectively waste time so I don't have to curse or talk about explicit acts until the first minute of the video passes. So here are some cute animals to pass the time, and then we'll return to the grimdark. And we're back! The balancing act of explaining the type of debauchery the Eldar got up to, yet somehow keeping this video from getting age restricted, will be interesting to say the least. So let's see how this goes. Now, as we talked about in the first video on this channel, the Eldar were a race that once prospered in the galaxy, as they had no wants or needs besides fulfilling their desire for pleasure. This was both good and bad for reasons we'll get into. You see, I want you to imagine a society of bipolar individuals with almost unlimited access to resources, also being magic, whose biology rewards the pursuit of pleasure above all else. When put in those terms, it's honestly strange that the Eldar lasted as long as they did. Despite this rampant hedonism, there were various factions of the Eldar that strove to distance themselves from this kind of debauchery. These factions would be the Craftworlders and the Exodites. The Craftworlders were kind of like the Pilgrims, as they felt the crazy shit that the rest of Eldar society was doing was gonna lead to the downfall of their race. So they packed up their stuff into these massive, continent-sized ships and took off to the farthest reaches of the galaxy. This would end up being an excellent decision, as when the Prince of Pleasure was born, they were almost entirely untouched. Well, of course, besides the soul eating after death thing, which is a bummer, but these Eldar found a way around this by using spirit stones. These are rare resources that are gifted to Eldar children when they are born. After death, they capture their souls, keeping them from ending up in Slaanesha's realm. These stones are then put into a device called an infinity circuit that can be seen as the Eldari afterlife, as the souls of the dead are kept safe and can be used as a repository of knowledge, and, in the worst case scenario, power. The only problem is the stones are incredibly rare, as the technology used to craft this precious commodity no longer exists. Due to this, the stones can only be found on some of the most dangerous parts of the galaxy, the Chrome Worlds. These planets inhabit a region of space near the Eye of Terra, in the wreckage of the fallen Eldar Empire. This pretty much puts a hard cap on the Eldar population, as what kind of shitty parents are gonna condemn their child to hell off rip? Now, the Craftworlders can be seen as the white bread of the Eldar race, as they aren't overly complicated. Just think of them as space elves and you've pretty much understood these guys. But the Exodites are a little more complicated, but cooler in my opinion. You might wonder why I'm making that assertion, and it's one word. Sorry, 3. Elves riding dinosaurs. Need I say more? I do, but that paints a pretty cool picture, right? Similarly to their cousins, the Craftworlders, the Exodites saw the writing on the walls and decided to get out of Dodge before things went to shit. Instead of the Pilgrims, however, you can see the Exodites as the Amish. The main difference between these two groups can be found in their location and lifestyle. The Exodites live on actual planets, rather than the ships of the Craftworlders. While these worlds are indeed beautiful, they are often harsh and incredibly deadly. Intentionally so, in fact, as the Exodites refused to repeat the mistakes of their forebears, as decadence and ease is what led to the fall. When it comes to technology, the Exodites scorn its use in most cases, as they see an over-reliance on technology to be a major cause of the downfall of their society. When everything is too easy, people need to find things to fill up their time. And when seeing an actual building fall on somebody can be considered comedy to your race, you could see where the problem with copious free time comes from. This fact would create the foundation for what Exodite society would become. So the Exodites refuse to use technology in most situations. Besides warfare, of course, as primitive tech will only get you so far. Now, we can get to the Drakari, also known as the most heinous motherfuckers in the setting. You could just assume that if you see a Dark Eldar in a story, they're up to no good. This race feeds on the suffering and pain of others. When Slaanesh was born, she ate the souls of almost all the Eldar. Those who survived were, for the most part, so far away from her birth, she couldn't reach them. This, by and large, were those Eldar that left society behind due to its debauchery. Basically, the Craft Orders and Exodites. There were another subsect of Eldar that escaped Slaanesh's wrath. That being the denizens of a city in the Webway, known as Kamara. The Webway is the Eldar's main form of travel, and it's one of the major reasons they dominated the galaxy, as when using the Webway, you can essentially step from one place to another instantaneously, without really the need to travel. You could think of it as like a wormhole. That's probably the best way to conceptualize its uses. The Webway also exists separately from the material plane and the warp. It's in its own special place. This led to it being somewhat shielded from the birth of Slaanesh. The only problem was, the Prince of Pleasure was able to just touch the souls of the residents of this plane. This would lead to a siphoning of their souls, as she ate their very essence to make herself stronger. This would end up being a pretty major problem, as without a soul, you would, die. However, the Drakari figured a workaround. As Slaanesh is the god of pain and pleasure, if you satiate its desires, they could not only stave off her hunger for their souls, but replenish their own, making them functionally immortal. This realization can be seen as the genesis of the Drakari, as they would perfect the art of torture as a means to survive their new reality. Now, don't get it twisted. These monsters revel in the pain they inflict on others. They aren't some tragic victims that regret their actions and seek to better themselves. No, they are monsters who deserve the worst, honestly, and if they're ever consumed by Slaanesh, the universe will be better off for it. Now that all that's said, I can tell you what I really think of the Eldar. I think they're fun. Now, in the Warhammer community, the Eldar kind of get a bad rap. They don't really get a lot of the support that I really think they deserve. I mean, Games Workshop hasn't put out many models for them in the past 20 years. Now, I know that they could be a little bit cookie cutter. I mean, they're space elves. We all know what elves are, and they're not unique in that. But I feel, especially with the addition of the Drakari, they add very interesting twists on what it means to be an elf. I mean, they're a race of psychic, vampire, emotional whatevers. They feed on the pain and suffering of others, and they're the worst. That is interesting. Now, when looking at where they stand in the current setting, it's a little disheartening. Even with the addition of more factions such as the Inari, they still mean almost nothing to the setting at large, and I really hope that changes in the future. With all that being said, this is where we're going to end for today. There is so much more I could talk about, but with the videos on this channel right now, I kind of want to keep it within the 10-minute range. Especially with all the stuff that I have going on in my own life. Creating another 20-minute video like my first one just isn't in the cards at this point. Now, I plan on talking about many of the other Warhammer factions, but I also feel as though it would be interesting to explore some different universes and try some different types of video content. So if you see them in the future, please feel free to check them out and maybe like and subscribe off of them as well. I appreciate you guys listening to this video, and I'll see you next time. See ya!